What's up, guys? In this video, we're going to be discussing a few mistakes that could make or break your land trust strategy. I've seen investors do this all the time without realizing the implications by unknowingly exposing their land trust vulnerabilities to the wrong parties. Okay, so what I'm going to give you right now are 3 critical mistakes that many land trust owners are making and what you can do to fix it. All right, let's get started. Okay, mistake number 1 when it comes to setting up your land trust is how you name it. Now, see, I see this all the time. A lot of people, when they're setting up land trusts, they want to take the route where I'm going to name it after the property address. So, for example, if I had property located on 124 Green Street, then many times when investors set up their land trust, they're going to set it up as 124 Green Street Land Trust. Now, there's 2 problems with what I just put up on the screen right here when you're using this type of naming convention. Number 1, let's assume that your property that you're transferring into the trust, you're doing it because you're concerned that the lender may accelerate the note, that generally speaking, you were planning to transfer this piece of real estate into this limited liability company, but then you watch a video online, you realize, hey, if I do that, my interest rate when I took out a loan for the property was at 3.75, but now it's sitting at 8. The lender that's holding that paper, they might accelerate. So I want to minimize that risk, but at the same time, I still need that asset protection. Hence, you go and use a land trust because you've been told that by transferring property into a land trust, it avoids lender acceleration. Now, whether or not that is completely accurate will depend on the lender. I mean, the lender could try to accelerate if the property is transferred into a land trust. But my point is, why even get into an argument with the lender to begin with? Why even put yourself in a position where they know that you've put your property into a land trust? But people do this time and time again. So if your motivation for using the land trust is to avoid the due on sale clause or the risk of lender acceleration, don't make these 2 mistakes I'm about to show you. Number 1, using the property address. You see, the thing is when I'm putting property into a land trust, I don't want banks or lenders to know that the property's been moved into any type of trust other than a living trust. I want to create the perception in their mind that what I'm doing is for estate planning purposes, that maybe I set up a living trust, and that's why I'm putting the property into that. Now, where this goes off the rails and causes the problems for you is that when you put the property address into the trust, if a lender were to pull title, obviously they're going to look at that and say, hey, most clients that we have that work with us who have living trusts, they don't put a property address in the name of their trust. So that could be a potential red flag. Now, you're probably wondering, well, then what do you use? I don't know. Pick anything other than a property address. Call it the Summer Street Trust, whatever you want. My beneficiary's favorite trust. I mean, the thing is that give the impression that this could be a estate planning trust and not a land trust. Because if you're trying to avoid a lender scrutiny, that's going to be the first thing. Now, the second mistake you're making here with this naming convention is using the word land in the trust title. You do not need to put land in the trust title. Now, people will state that in Florida, you do need to use it, and you do not. That is not required. When you create a land trust, there's no reason why you need to use the word land. I mean, the only person that's helping is you, because if you had a bunch of trusts that were really similar in nature and you're trying to figure out what's in them, well, if you saw it was a land trust, you're thinking, all right, well, that's holding real estate, whereas the other one's not. Stay away from it. Never use the word land in your trust because you're not going to alert third parties as to what type of trust they're dealing with. Now, the other thing about this that I think is really important is that when a third party looks at a trust where it says 124 Street Land Trust, that might tell them, if they're unfamiliar with it, let's say I'm a tenant or attorney representing a tenant who's been injured in a property, and I see this 124 Green Street Land Trust, I might think, well, I'm going to look this up. What is a land trust? They look it up and they come across one of my videos where I'm explaining land trusts. And then they realize, hey, I just need to go back through the chain of title to figure out who actually owns this property. So by not putting the word land trust in there, you're not alerting other people to the nature of that trust and what its intended purpose is. So there's another reason why I would not use land when I'm creating these trusts. All right, so that brings me to my second mistake that I see happen a lot. And when you're creating a land trust, what's typically going on here in many of these trusts, of course, is that we want anonymity, right? We want to make sure that when we're taking title out of our name and we're putting it into the trust where I'm listed as a beneficiary, I don't want people to know that I'm still the owner of it. I mean, that's one of the major benefits to using this strategy. So in order to achieve anonymity with a land trust, you have to use a nominee trustee. So let's assume that you appoint your friend over here, Fred, or your attorney, as your nominee trustee. So Fred's name will go on title, say Fred as trustee of the Green Street Trust. Now, that's great. You get your anonymity for the property. But the problem, and I just ran into this not long ago, is that Fred, when he resigns his position via the land trust document, which states when Fred resigns, then you take over. And again, that's not public record, so no one's going to see this. When he resigns his position as trustee and you take over, it's private. So when you are attempting to sell the property or refi the property, what will title look at? They're going to look at what is public. And so when they look at what is public and not what is private, they see Fred. And so they assume Fred is the only person who is able to deal with this trust property because he's listed as a trustee. Now, I've had people tell me, well, Clint, it's not a big deal. I'll just show them the documentation and I'll be able to make this work. And they're going to say, well, yeah, Fred resigned and now Clint's in charge. Well, I've sold property and land trust before, and I've never got it to work that way. So for you, whenever you have a trustee resign, you need to always ask for a trustee deed. You got to get this trustee deed. And what that is where the trustee, Fred, transfers the trusteeship to you via deed that is recordable. And the purpose for this is that when you need to do something with the property, which requires your name be listed on title, so instead it says Fred trustee, it'll have your name as trustee of the Green Street Trust, you can record that deed. This is important. You got to get it right away. That's one of the major first documents you should draft after you set up your trust and you're deeding the property in as a trustee's deed, because you don't want Fred to disappear. Maybe he heads off to the Europe for a 5-month vacation. You're trying to sell the property and they need to get a hold of Fred, but he's in Croatia and you can't find him. That could screw up your property sale. So always get that trustee deed. Now, the last thing I want to push on or bring to your attention here is that using land trust for investment properties works great. However, where problems arise is where you have the creative investor that thinks to themselves, hey, it's working awesome for my investment property. I know, why not set up a land trust here because of the anonymity feature that I like, and I'll move my personal residence into this land trust. And again, I'll have Fred on there as my nominee trustee and I'll be the beneficiary. Now my personal property, my personal residence, it's no longer in my name. So people don't know where I live. So if I have disgruntled tenants or customers, they're not going to show up at my house. Well, I like the thinking, but the execution is the problem. You see, when you put your personal residence into a land trust, you may not understand how title is held in a land trust versus a living trust. Now, this is where we get into the legal aspects of these types of documents. It's not a one-size-fits-all. That's why if you've been on any of my events, for example, I teach a one-day tax and asset protection event on Saturdays. It's completely free for you to come to that event. I will talk about a trust strategy for your personal residence, but it is not a land trust. Why? Because when you transfer title into a land trust, you place in the trustee's name legal and equitable title. Now, what does this mean? Well, if you live in a state with a homestead exemption, a big homestead exemption, 200,000, 500,000, maybe unlimited homestead exemption. Well, for many of those states with those homestead exemptions that you're trying to keep in case something were to happen and you were to be sued so they can't take your property or your equity from you, it requires that you hold equitable title. But see, when you put it into a land trust, you're transferring both equitable and legal to your trustee. Therefore, if you have a personal residence in a land trust and something goes wrong, the creditor's attorney can have a very good argument to state that the homestead exemption is now forfeited because you gave up your equitable title. So if you're using a land trust for investment property, great, but do not use it for your personal residence. You want to set up a trust that's designed to keep equitable title in your name and legal title in Fred's name. Hey, if you want to learn more about my one-day tax and asset protection event for real estate investors, I've got a link down in the show notes. You can go, you can click on it, you can register for it. It's completely free. Phenomenal event. You're going to learn all about this strategy, a lot about land trusts, how to use LLCs, how to take advantage of the tax code to reduce your taxes, especially if you're a real estate investor or a business owner. But more importantly, by coming to this event, I'm going to have a team of tax preparers and attorneys that are going to be on there answering your individual questions. So you're going to leave there, I guarantee it, in a better place than when you joined. Look forward to seeing you there.